So, hello and welcome to Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. We're just going to hang out for a couple minutes while we get this live stream up and rolling. We're looking now into one of our incubators in our nursery where we have a few orphaned opossums. And so today we'll be exploring all about these opossum care, or the orphan care rather. So we'll have some squirrels and some opossums who are all the age where they need that kind of intervention. And so when they're this tiny, we do keep the incubator enclosures pretty spartan, so we can keep an eye on how they're doing. As these little fellows get bigger and older, we add more and more enrichment until eventually they're ready to transition to our halfway house cages, and then they'll move out towards the outside enclosures. Oh, there's our fourth one peeking out. And so hello everyone and welcome. And so we're just spending a couple minutes hanging out in a nursery while everything's getting set up. Yes, and so if you guys have any questions at any time, please chime on in, let me know. My name is Dan, Dr. Dan Famini. You can see my reflection vaguely in the glass there. And yes, Kelsey's here as well. And so at the Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue Center, our population always ebbs and flows. A couple days ago, all our incubators were full. Right now, a lot of those young orphans have luckily graduated out of incubators into their next level of enclosures. And we can take a peek at those a little bit later today. But this is our incubator full of opossums at the moment. And so we have several litters of opossums that are here. In all cases, something tragic happened to the parents. They're either caught by a dog or hit by a car would be two of the most common outcomes. And so you can see that at this age, they're still not visual. And so they're perceiving the world primarily by feel and touch and a little bit by sound. The sense of smell is not really dynamic yet. They would normally still be in the pouch at this age. And so, you already have someone out there. Okay. All right, so we're ready in our little treatment area. Oops. So we'll transition away from this incubator for now and out to our main treatment area. So we have Dame Victoria, and so with getting things ready, and so we do have another orphan here. This is a western gray squirrel, and so as you can see, this one's at an older stage of development compared to those opossums. And so western gray squirrels are very, very eager eaters. And so if anything, the challenge with these guys is to keep them from guzzling their food too quickly. So we have to split their meals into a few smaller syringes. And so each animal is fed its own kind of formula. There is no one milk replacer that works for all these different species. So squirrels have different needs than opossums, than raccoons, than foxes, etc. Every species has their own nutritional requirements, and if you give them the wrong food, then that does disrupt their GI tract, and if it's too far off, that can even be catastrophically unfortunate. And so you can see this little fellow greatly enjoys this meal. So whenever these guys need their feeding, that is also when we take the opportunity to provide full care. So we'll give them a quick once over. Often animals come in here dehydrated, and so they'll need additional fluid therapy, which we'll usually do subcutaneously, meaning under the skin. This one's been here a little while, so it's well hydrated. We also will, of course, weigh them every day and keep track of any other health needs that they have. And so we do have no less than 7 different kinds of species of squirrel here in Sonoma County, but there's only a couple that we get routinely here at the center. Others we can get every once in a while. And so, yes, we are measuring that food with syringes, so we can give them the right amount. And those are special modified nipples there for feeding. And so some species are much more challenging than others, but luckily these squirrels are very cooperative orphans when it comes to feeding. And so I'll just be a minute so you can hear the sounds of that happy squirrel. So in terms of types of squirrel, does anyone know what species we have right in front of us? All right, so this is our most common species of squirrel that you'll see. In terms of actual numbers, no one's really clear on the exact populations of ground versus tree squirrels, but this is one of our tree squirrels. This is a western gray squirrel. And so this is a native squirrel. And while they're called a gray squirrel, they can have quite a bit of variation in color, from very light to reddish gray to very dark. There we go. And then at this age, do these guys also need stimulation?
No.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll talk about stimulation in a minute, but when the orphans are very young, they will not eliminate on their own. And, oh, howdy, Claire. They will need to be stimulated, but this squirrel's old enough that it has mature enough bathroom habits that we don't need to stimulate it for that component. And with most species, when they have a meal, they'll appropriately consume that liquid. Some species every once in a while can get a lot of air in there, so there are a couple species that will need to be burped, but not routinely for most of these species. Do squirrels or opossums? I can't imagine ever. No. In fact, the GI system of a squirrel is such that any air that goes down there is usually have to go all the way through the GI tract. They don't naturally bring things up as easily. They don't naturally vomit, etc. And so, let's see how close our squirrel will be comfortable with the camera getting as we are here for just the feeding. So depending on the age that orphans come in here, they may need care from as often as every couple hours to just a couple times a day. And so this squirrel is old enough that it's only needing care a couple times a day. And so socially, we do want to keep these individuals wild. And so right now, this is the most noise they're ever going to hear during these kinds of feeding sessions. Usually we keep it nice and quiet for the purpose of not acclimating them. So this is pretty unusual that there's this much human talking going on. And yes, we always wear gloves, for both for the safety of the patients and for the safety of ourselves, because there are bacteria and other things that could be normal in one species that'd be abnormal in another. And also, the last thing we'd want to do is track any pathogens from one animal to another. And so we are in the main treatment area here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. I see a lot of people have joined us over the last few minutes. And so right next door to our squirrel, we do have our scale. And so we will clean between every patient, as you see, but we will indeed weigh every animal every feeding. Because a baby should always be gaining weight. All of these species should only be heading upwards in terms of their size. And if they're ever not gaining weight, let alone losing weight, then they need more medical intervention. All right. And so, while we wait so then our plan from here, Megan, are you going to end up bringing one of our eastern fox squirrels by? Is that the plan?
Well, we can do the opossums.
Okay, so we'll be getting some opossums in. All right. Tell me, Victoria, what are you doing right now?
I am making formula.
All right, and so even though, with a formula, it's more complicated than just having a different formula for every given species, we also have to worry about the concentration or potency of the formula as the animals age. And so orphan care it requires precision, and so every litter and sometimes every individual will have their personalized needs being calibrated, and so always taking into account how the animal's doing day by day. All right, and so we're going to go for some of our youngest patients that are in-house at the moment. And so when these animals get older, we'll identify them by ear tags, but at this age, we usually will just mark the tail so we can distinguish one from the other. And so just in terms of timing, we're trying to keep things consistent for everyone here at 11:30 on Thursdays. However, we do need to put the priority on the animals' needs, and so these little babies are between their feeding times, correct?
Yes.
So we'll give them a checkup so you can see how that process operates, but they're not going to, this is not the right time at this moment for a meal, but we'll go work on the rest of it. And so here we have our stimulated pouch. And so, all right, so do we have an estimated age on these guys?
These guys are just about 45 days.
And so with opossums, the 45 days for a lot of species would be much more mature. But remember, these guys are born, we consider them born when they leave the uterus and head into the pouch. And so really a lot of development on most mammals would still happen within mom will be happening in that pouch. And so the ages can be a little bit, they're going to be less developed at that number of days compared to when we talk about, say, squirrels or foxes or raccoons.
And I was actually mistaken. These guys are not quite 45 days. They're probably about 30, 35 days.
Okay, fair enough. And so right now you are stimulating
Yes.
our little friend here. And so stimulating is mimicking what the mother would be doing in terms of, in the wild, the mother would be licking that genitalia to encourage the offspring to eliminate, to urinate and defecate. And so this is something that has to be done every feeding, and for some individuals we'll do between feedings checks just to give them the opportunity, because you wouldn't want you don't want that waste to build up within them. That is a critical part. Oh, look at those eyes, they are open. All right. And so opossums are going to be, as a species, they're going to be less dynamic in terms of their activity level compared to other orphans. That is a species that the playing possum and just being mellow is more of their typical pattern. And so all of these guys are getting, and so these guys at this age, they're what, on care 3 times a day?
Yes.
3 times a day, where they're getting weighed, fed, stimulating to eliminate, and then also just calibrating further intervention, things like fluids if need be. All right, so if anyone has any questions, please do type them in and we can address them. And so as you can imagine, right, when we have the peak of our orphan population, that all of this care can take a long time if you have, many litters all in at once. Right now we have a couple small litters that we're caring for at this level, but it always ebbs and flows. You never know what's going to come in, and so the population today could be dramatically different than a couple days prior or after. Just the nature of working at a rescue. And so these look like plump, pretty well hydrated little fellows. Let's see, and so opossums don't usually mind a close-up. And so how long do they stay in the pouch? So that is a slippery slope for these guys, because and so at this age they would still basically essentially be in the pouch, but they can come out and start exploring, and so they will kind of go in and out for a while. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, but isn't it about 2 months before they leave the pouch and stay out?
It just depends on how big they are. So they start getting so big that they don't fit in the pouch anymore, so they'll start crawling out and hanging. So it just depends on how big they are, how much milk they're getting from mom, how healthy she is. So yeah, that sounds about right. About a month or two, they're going to start, about a month, they're going to start crawling out a little bit.
Start exploring.
Yeah.
And so
hanging on. And she, mom will just keep going. So once they get to that hanging on the outside of mom, or if they don't all fit in the pouch, then they can actually kind of drop off as she's walking along. And we call those ones drop-offs because she doesn't stop. Mom doesn't care. She just keeps on going. So often we'll get them a little bigger than this, and it's because they've dropped off of mom as she's walking along.
And so, and also, of course, litter size will be an impact there too. If there's a few small litters, a few individuals, they'll be able to hang out in that pouch a little bit longer than if you have a larger litter, then they'll size out of it relatively earlier. So one question is how many opossums we have on hand right now. So let's see, we got 4, 6, 7, 11, And then we have a mom with 8 or 7 more in addition to that. So we have a couple dozen opossums basically at the moment. And so, which is not uncommon number for this time of year. Slightly on the low side, but hopefully with less cars on the road, there's less possums needing care. And so you can see the red tail on that one and the black tail on this one. Those are just marks that we put there so we can keep track of individuals. And so we wouldn't want one to drop in weight and us to think it's a different one. So that is critical for keeping track of them. In terms of how they came to be with us, and so all of these animals were brought by Good Samaritans who found individuals. We do have one group that came in because the mom was hit by a car. We have one group that came in because the dog caught mom. We do have one group because mom was found in a trap, no longer alive. And so let me just give you guys a peek at some of our older individuals. And so these guys are not yet ready to head outside, but they are old enough that they are experimenting with food. And so this is kind of our next stage in terms of care. We basically will have 4 different locations or levels of development. And so we'll have the incubators, as you saw initially, and then we have these other hospital cages for when they don't need the temperature support of an incubator. And then after they mature from this stage, we put them in what's called the nursery, which is still inside another building, but with larger enclosures. And then from there, they head to outside enclosures, and each species, we have their own enclosures set up. And so that's the typical sequence of care for orphans. They come in, incubator to these hospital cages. Oh, don't want you to escape. To our nursery, and then our outside enclosures. And so at this age, they're a little bit shy of really experimenting with food, but they should be. And so we'll offer them a variety of things, chopped up fruits and veggies, some protein. We will still use the formula, the baby feeding formula, and make it into kind of a custard for them. And so just do everything we can to encourage them to start foraging. And we still do make sure that we stop and weigh them every day, check their status, make sure they don't need fluids or other similar support. But this is that next stage of development. So these guys came in a little bit earlier than our other individuals, and so they're a little bit more mature. And so next up, we have another squirrel that's going to be joining us. It'll be an eastern fox squirrel, which we do find commonly in the more western side of Sonoma County. And so there's a question about raccoons. We absolutely will have raccoons, but it's too early in the year. And so this time of year is all about opossums and squirrels. And so then as we head into late May or June, we'll start getting in raccoons, and we'll get dozens of orphan raccoons over the course of the summer. Later, as we head to June, July, we tend to get foxes, and also the smaller numbers of species like bobcats and coyotes, etc. And then towards the end of summer, we'll get another wave of these opossums and squirrels. So right now we're still on our first wave on the long trek that is every year's baby season. Oh, and skunks. Skunks will be in the middle as well. We do get a significant number of skunks. So for an opossum, this is a fairly active young juvenile. As I said, a lot of the time they're just going to be much more mellow compared to some other species. And so, and I think we still have some more opossums next door. And so there's a note there about having a pet squirrel, and of course we would not recommend any of these guys as pet companions. These are wild animals, and we want to do everything we can to keep them in the wild. And so, all right, here's next age yet. This individual just came in, and so is a little bit delicate yet, so still needs some fluids and other support, but assuming it rebounds, this one's just a couple days from being ready to head on outside, or to head at least to a nursery enclosure, to our next building out of the hospital. But still has some recuperating to do, still needs to get a bit stronger and better hydrated and more stable before it's ready. All right, there, I'm just gonna wait that out. So there's a question about what veggies and fruits the opossums will eat. And so we will feed these guys quite a variety. And so we'll offer them largely whatever is seasonally available. But they will enjoy apples, they'll enjoy berries, they'll enjoy your squashes, they'll enjoy beans and peas, they'll enjoy the whole spectrum. And so, all right, in case you're curious, here is our typical estimated aging chart. So you can see how the usual protocol is. And also a quick word on opossums versus possums. And so here in North America, we have opossums. Possums are a separate species. That would be an Australian animal. And so let me just check in. So how are we doing on our next squirrel arrival?
We're going to have to skip that feed.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah, we'll skip that feed.
All right. And so I'm just going to hang out with these opossums for just a minute, and then I'll head out to what we call the nursery area so you guys can see our next stage. But in terms of our sequence of care, every individual here needs to be weighed, then they need to be fed, then they'll need any supplemental care such as sub-Q fluids or medicine, then they'll need to be stimulated, so they eliminate, and then they head back in. And during that time, of course, we're cleaning out all these enclosures in between. And so, all right, so bear with me as we turn our attention elsewhere. And so I'm going to head on out to the nursery. So you're going to get a mini tour of part of our facility here, leaving our hospital area. And this is our main thoroughfare here at Wildlife Rescue. And so then we have our kitchen and food prep area that we'll move through and then around to the nursery. All right, so we're prepping all our diets for both our current resident and our educational ambassador, as well as our rehab animals. And so here we are at our vista.
Disconnect from my...
There
you go.
All right, should be done. All right, so from our perch up on Meacham Road in Petaluma, heading around, and this is the nursery building. And so, ooh, smells a little bit like skunk. All right, looks like we had a skunk that just came in. We'll be dealing with that in a moment. Okay, and so these are our nursery enclosures, and so we do try to keep stimulation minimal. That's why everyone is covered up. And so that squirrel... Hello, friend. We're going to be nice and calm and quiet. But you can see we do offer them quite a variety of different foods. Yes, squirrels do eat nuts, but they do eat a variety of other produce as well. And so they always have multiple hide areas, both above and below. And so we'll see who wants to be seen. Of course, our priority is for the care of the animals. And so...
stage opossum.
All right, so we have a slightly older opossum in here. And so where are you looking?
Here's our diet.
All right, yeah, so here's our usual mix. So we got plenty of tasty fruit, a little bit of veggies, and is that mice? Tasty mice as well, because opossums are going to be omnivores. They're going to be primarily scavengers. And so they will eat both protein and produce sources. So here we are on that independent stage. Still need careful monitoring. Sometimes these guys will be a little bit slow to take feed, but these guys are doing pretty well. And so these areas were just cleaned. And so you don't see the evidence of blood consumption just yet. And look at that earring. You can notice on that left ear, you have that tag. And that's the way that we identify each individual, so that we can track them on a daily basis. And so, I don't know if you heard the skittering and scamping around, but that is the squirrels and the other enclosures around us. And so, And so once again, this is probably the most human voice these guys will have heard in a good long time. We try to stay nice and quiet so we don't disturb or acclimate them.
This is the mother with the babies in the pouch.
Oh, the mother with the babies in the pouch. Okay, so this mom came in quite some time ago. She was almost certainly hit by a car. She had a fractured jaw as well as an injured eye. And so we did everything we could to make a very brief procedure. So I just wired that jaw back into stability, and so the babies are just old enough now that they'll be able to come out of that pouch for a while, so we can do a bigger procedure and take care of her eye issues as well. It's actually her other eye. This is her normal eye that you're looking at. But so far so good, and so there is a full 7 babies in there. And so if you look back at our Facebook messages from the weeks past, you can see what those little ones in the pouch appear as. And earlier, when the opossums are that young, their faces are literally fused onto the nipples in the pouch, so it wasn't safe to remove them. And so there's a question there about bananas. Well, sure. These opossums do enjoy bananas. Bananas are relatively high sugar food, and so most of the animals here. And so, all right, so you saw our opossum chart. This is our squirrel chart in terms of the age and type of care that they need. And so you can tell they're not going to really open those eyes until they're 6 weeks old. That is dramatically older than, say, puppies or kittens, if that's what you're used to. And so every species is going to be different in terms of how altricial or precocious they are. Okay, we do have one individual that's getting a little bit anxious from all this activity around, so we'll go ahead and head out of the nursery. And so, okay, and so that's our orphan care. That summarizes what all of our individuals need here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. And so I'm just going to open it up to any questions as we plan on heading on out here. And so thank you guys all for watching and joining us on this live stream. And so everyone stay safe. Make sure you're washing your hands. Make sure you're wearing your masks when you head out to other places. And if you do encounter any wildlife that is injured or orphaned, otherwise needs care, then give us a call, and we can figure out how we can work together to take care of that animal's needs. And so, however, you saw that all those different formulas, all those different concentrations, taking care of an orphan animal is its own specialized science. And so make sure if you find an animal in need, you get it to a rehab center such as this one. And if you want to work toward, and so if you can always check our website if you want to look in towards volunteering or becoming part of our foster team. And so that is an option available as well. And so see, there's a question here about what happens to the father opossum. Well, the father opossum is not going to stick around. So after those guys, with some species, the fathers are involved in that patient care, but opossums is not one of them. And so it is all opossum mothers are basically single moms when it comes to the tasks of care for the offspring. All right, it's going to go last call on questions before we head on out. There's a question on lifespan. Absolutely, that is true. The lifespan of opossums is shockingly short. Opossums tend to only live for a few years. Opossums will live, so 3 would be totally reasonable. We've seen them get 4, 5. There was 1 in captivity that was older than that, but usually 3 or 4 is about it. They are going through their life all too quickly. And so, such is their reproductive strategy. And so we do want to try to help out any of our wildlife that may need it, including our opossums. And so we'll let you know next week what new aspect of the activities here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue will invite you to on our live stream next Thursday. Take care, everyone, and stay safe. And again, this was Dr. Dan Famini from Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue.